Whenever you see headlines about Sudan, the words civil war are just everywhere. But what if that's not really the whole story? What if the conflict we're all watching is just a cover for something much, much bigger? Seriously, what if all the fighting, all the horrific violence, what if that isn't even the point of the war? What if it's all just a massive distraction, a cover for one of the biggest resource heists of our time? You see, pretty much every conflict has two stories. There's the official one you get on the news, and then there's the story you find when you, well, follow the money. So let's put them side by side. And let's be absolutely clear about this. The human tragedy is horrifyingly real. In places like Darfur, we're talking about massacres and starvation on a scale that's just hard to comprehend. But while the world's eyes are fixed on the bloodshed, something else is going on, completely behind the scenes. The story you'll usually hear is pretty simple. It's a tragic power struggle between two rival generals. But the evidence? It points to something else entirely. It points to a multi-billion-dollar heist, with this entire devastating conflict being fueled by the trade in one single precious resource, gold. Okay, so how do you even begin to prove a theory that big? Well, just like any good heist movie, you have to follow the money, or in this case, you follow the gold. So this is our mission. We know the groups fighting, especially the one called the Rapid Support Forces, or RSF, have taken over Sudan's gold mines. The gold gets dug up, but then it just vanishes from the country's official records. So the big question is, where is it all going? Take a look at this number. Just let it sink in for a second. 90%. It's an absolutely massive figure. And honestly, it's the key to understanding this entire war. And here it is, the answer. According to Sudan's own central bank, 90% of its official gold exports are flowing to a single destination, the United Arab Emirates. Think about that. Not to a bunch of different countries, not to a global market. Almost all of it is going to one buyer. And look, Sudan isn't some weird, isolated case. As you can see right here, the UAE has basically become the go-to hub for gold coming out of fragile and war-torn states all across the region. This is a well-established pipeline for what people call conflict minerals. And let's not mince words about what this is. I mean, don't just take my word for it. Listen to Mark Ummel from the NGO SwissAid. He says it is conflict gold. They are funding their engagement in the conflict with this trade of gold. He says gold isn't just some small part of the war. It is the key element. So you're probably wondering, how on earth does blood gold from a mine in Sudan end up getting sold on the legitimate world market? Well, it goes through a very specific process, a mechanism we're calling the Dubai Laundromat. It's a pretty simple and really deadly cycle. Okay, step 1, the gold is mined and smuggled out of Sudan. Step 2, it shows up in Dubai where it gets refined. This is where its origins are basically washed clean. Step 3, this newly laundered gold is sold on the global market. And step 4, the most important part, the profits flow right back into Sudan to buy more weapons and keep the war going. The more they fight, the more gold they control. The war literally pays for itself. But why Dubai? Well, the city has this huge network of what are called free trade zones, and they create the absolute perfect environment for this stuff. With things like zero corporate tax, it's incredibly easy to hide where money is coming from and to launder illicit goods. It's a massive vulnerability that international watchdogs have been flagging for years. So where does all this cleaned gold finally end up? A huge chunk of it lands in Switzerland, which is one of the biggest gold refining hubs in the world. And here's the kicker, the critical loophole. Once that gold has been refined in Dubai, Swiss importers aren't actually required to check where it originally came from. And just like that, gold dug up in a conflict zone enters the legitimate global market. Now, what's happening in Sudan, it's not some kind of unique one-off tragedy. It's actually a predictable and repeatable pattern. It's a deadly formula that we see again and again in resource-rich countries all over the world. Let's just break down the pattern. It's like a recipe. First, you start with a country that is incredibly rich in some natural resource, like gold. Then you combine that with a weak or maybe a totally collapsed government. And the result? You get this toxic incentive structure where all of a sudden it's way more profitable for armed groups to fight each other for control of the mines than it is to actually, build a stable country. And this right here, this is what we call the resource curse loop. It's this tragic paradox where a nation's greatest wealth becomes the very thing that fuels its destruction. The goal isn't to govern anymore. The goal is just to control the asset. The country itself, it just becomes an obstacle.
And this isn't just some economic theory we're talking about anymore. The real-world consequences of this gold trade have absolutely exploded, and now they're playing out on the world's highest legal stage.
Yeah, this is no longer just an accusation you're hearing from journalists or NGOs. Sudan's internationally recognized government has officially taken the UAE to the World Court. They're accusing them of complicity in genocide for funding and arming the RSF. What started as a resource heist has now become one of the most serious legal charges a country can possibly face. So really, we're left with a choice. We can keep seeing this conflict as just another tragic civil war, or we can follow the money. So the next time you see a headline about Sudan, maybe you can ask a different question. Who is buying the gold that's paying for the bullets? Because understanding this heist, it isn't just about Sudan. It's about understanding the hidden engine that drives so many of our modern wars.